The Seahawks won too, by the way, so that was nice. We can finally sort of, well, I mean, they've won 2 games now, but it's a good weekend all in all. There were some downsides to it, but I think, Bel, you'd agree with this. If we look at the grand scheme of things, everything was pretty solid, across the 7 teams that we cover here.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and just dive right in here on that Seahawks win. So it was quite a bit of an offensive shootout there, but Seattle did come out with the win 48-45. I chose, in terms of offense, Rashad Penny as my offensive player of the game. He had 17 carries, 151 total yards, and 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns came on third down. And I will say that it was kind of difficult for me to pick this game, just because I was going back and forth between him and DK. DK also had a great game. So you want to go ahead and dive in on why you chose Geno Smith?
Well, I think that you brought up a good point with Rashad Penny here. I mean, like you said, with a shootout like this, 48 points, you could have gone with anyone across the board here. I went with Geno just because I think that, we had the game against the 49ers that looked pretty rough. Offense looked pretty stagnant, pretty incompetent. Couldn't get anything done. The Falcons game, Geno was all right. I mean, the pick in the fourth quarter wasn't ideal, but it's a tough situation. I thought in this game, looking back at the entirety of the offensive play, looked competent, looked like he was efficient. And, we know he's not going to be able to launch the deep ball like Russell Wilson has, like certain quarterbacks have. But he was able to use his legs. He had a scramble right up the middle for each touchdown, made some smart decisions, was effective. I liked how they were able to get DK Metcalf the ball. I would have agreed with you on Rashad Penny because in this game, he looked like the Rashad Penny we saw at the end of the year last season. And if Seattle can get that consistently, you'd have a really balanced offense, be able to go to the tight ends. You're using Noah Fant, Will Dissly, Kobe Parkinson really well. They continue to use their 3 tight ends, which is really interesting to me because they didn't used to do that in Russell Wilson times, as we've discussed. DK had a great game. We'll talk about the cart incident in a little bit, but just looked efficient to me. And the completion stat, I know some people might brush it off, but Geno has a 77.3 completion percentage through his first 4 games this season. That's the highest percentage with a minimum of 125 attempts by a quarterback in his first 4 games of a season in NFL history. So like him or not, I got to admit he's not the future, but at the same time, he's doing generally what you need him to do. So I can't be mad at it. And as several outlets have pointed out, stat wise, he's outplaying Russell Wilson. So
yeah, and stat wise, as you mentioned, I think this is the first time that a QB has won a football game when their opponent has scored 45 points. So that was a big deal. Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal because you look at the list of obviously some of the greats that we consider great QBs, and Geno's the only one that's done it. So good for him.
It's funny to think about. Great QB. But no, yeah, I think, also too, I think we should highlight the offensive line. They did not give up a sack this game. They've been we talked about this, I think, in the beginning of the year and even early weeks 1 and 2. But the offensive tackle positions, 2 rookies, and Charles Cross, a guy that was a top 10 pick, and Abraham Lucas, a guy I believe was a third rounder. Guys like that. Abe Lucas has played great. I think he's had like 1 blemish over 4 weeks, which is not something you'd expect with a rookie tackle, but offensive line looks good for now. That's the only thing we can ask. And obviously that plays into both of our players of the game and Rashad Penny being able to run the rock as he was, and Geno Smith having time in the pocket. He tweeted about it. He's like grilling steaks back there. So offensive line has done their part for the most part recently.
Yes. Should we feel ready to transition over to defensive players of the game here? All right. So I'm going to sound like a broken record because this is, I think, the 3rd week that I've picked him, but I went with Tariq Woolen again. He was 4 for 1 on tackles and assisted tackles, and had that pick six touchdown that I think really gave them, and by them, the Seahawks, the lead that they needed. So if we take away the offensive points, I feel like that was really the turning point in the game, and that's what won them the game. Because, like we said, it was a shootout. So you take that away from them, we don't know where that leaves our Seahawks for the game. So
That's a good point. I mean, that was pretty early into the second half as well. So, like you said, kind of come out and continue to build that lead. And I think Cliff Averill said it in a comment under the pick that Woolen had last week against Atlanta. He says they come in bunches, and there's that case right there. I know that, we look at the grand scheme of this game, and 45 points isn't ideal. You could look at several blown coverages here for Seattle, but I think this is a positive thing to look at Woolen and what he was able to do here. So I like that. For the sake of being different, I went with Uchenna Nwosu. Uchenna's, not huge numbers, but 3 total tackles, a solo tackle, a sack, 1 tackle for loss, a pass deflection, a QB hit. So kind of smorgasbord of things there on the defensive side of the ball. And just, with this 3-4 defense, again, the coverage has been relatively a big issue. Again, 45 points. You look at the highlights of this game, and there are several times that Seattle just gets beat flat out.
Oh, yeah.
But, so you want to be able to somewhat generate pass rush, and that's been an issue for Seattle for several years to this point. And to be able to see at least some decent contribution from their free agent signing, I appreciate that. And, I know he won NFC Defensive Player of the Week for week 1. So hoping to see more of that sort of continue throughout the season. But Woolen, it'll be really fun to watch him throughout the year. And I'm interested to see, once we get guys off of the inactive list, once we go over that in injury news, where he fits, because we've got a couple of veterans who have not been able to suit up yet. So I wonder if he's earned that playing time. So
sure. That'll be interesting to see. And as you mentioned, some of our inactives lists, let's move on to our injury news here. So on September 28th, running back Travis Homer was placed on IR, missing at least the next 4 games. Corner Xavier Crawford signed off the practice squad to fill in that spot on the 53-man roster. Injury report against the Lions. Questionable were corner Justin Coleman with a calf injury. He did not participate in practice. Joey Blount actually was a full participant in practice, but he was still inactive against Detroit. Some others on that list of inactives were Miles Adams, Artie Burns, Justin Coleman, Joey Blount, Phil Haynes, and Derek Young. Injuries against Detroit were linebacker Daryl Johnson left the game with an ankle injury, and he did not return. And not so much injury news, but we did see DK Metcalf get carted off during the game. Bathroom break. It was non-injury related. He needed to get off the field immediately, and so that's why the card came out.
The clench walk wasn't going to work, he said. I believe him. I believe that fully. I'd never seen that, though, where he had to take the cart, because I think the story was that the bathroom was a long way away. And so they were like, we got a cart for you. So he kind of pulled a Paul Pierce there, even though Paul Pierce denies that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was – I was worried because you see the headline, DK Metcalf carted off in 4th quarter. Like, great. What else can we use? And I was like, he's fine. It was just a bathroom break. Like, I always wonder about that, though, right? Because, like, in a game, I'm like, what if DK answers it there. So.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah. Moving on to some injury news in regard to the league. We all saw Tua Tagavoila go down, and he suffered a head injury against the Bills in the first half. He stumbled multiple times coming off the field, comes back out in the second half, and plays the remainder of the game. He was cleared to come back. On the 30th, which was a Thursday night football game, quick return to the field. He was carted off with a head, neck, and back injuries. He was taken to a local medical center for further evaluation, and he was discharged from the hospital, and I believe traveled back with the team. But the quarterback's first scans were negative. He flew back with the team in a neck brace and will get an MRI. The NFLPA is undergoing their own investigation. The NFL's chief medical officer that Tagavoila was checked for concussion symptoms, says that Tagavoila was checked for concussion symptoms every day this past week. And then later, of course, they were pursuing legal action as the NFLPA investigates a decision for QB to play on Thursday Night Football. I believe there was already an investigation because of his return, so that didn't make things easy. And on October 1st, the neurologist that did clear him to come back would be fired by the NFLPA. And he was an independent doctor that was involved in the decision to clear him. I'm sure he received a lot of heat. I mean, what's your take here? Should we have even seen him come back after halftime of that?
No. Just watching the video, I have to admit, I'm kind of, with how thick the Mariners playoff race has been, and some others, like with the rain as well, I haven't kept up as much NFL news as I would like to. Obviously, I've got to manage my 3 football teams, which I've won 2 games out of the 3 this week. But I mean, reading the thing about the Buffalo game, I was like, okay, if it's a head thing, head and neck, we know with like Chris Carson, you don't want to mess with that guy. Ricardo Lockett. Obviously, those are different injuries than what happened with Tua. I believe the thing against Buffalo is like whiplash, but just seeing him stumble was bad. I'm like, that shouldn't have happened. And then, especially considering that Miami came back to play on a Thursday after the Sunday game, with that, if it was a Sunday, maybe that's a sell, but I tend to err on the side of caution regardless. But yeah, the Thursday game, I mean, Richard Sherman's talked about it with injuries, about not playing Thursdays at all. But yeah, watching the video of what happened on Thursday was pretty sickening, just to see the reaction to that. Glad to see that they put out a statement that he is okay, but I would just not have him play for a week or 2. I mean, the Dolphins seem to have, like, they've got good talent on that roster. If this had all not happened, I'm sure we'd be talking about how good the Dolphins are right now. But this is some pretty scary stuff. I think it was Emmanuel Acho. He's pretty former NFL player, been pretty active as an analyst in his non-playing career, has said that we know that we don't know a lot about the brain and how it functions. It's kind of like the ocean. We don't know enough about it, really, and it's frightening. So it's like we don't know how damaged his brain is right now, which is scary to think about. So if I know McDaniels defended his decision to play him on Thursday, but I just think, if I'm in that head coaching chair, I'm giving him a week or 2 off, having him see some specialists or something, because this is, I mean, just seeing. I don't know if you've seen the video. If not, I would kind of recommend not, because it's pretty disheartening. But it was scary. So I would err on the side of caution. I just hope he's all right, because that's some pretty scary stuff. I know there's that. I don't know if you saw it, the new helmets that they were trying out. Get him one of those. Wrap him in bubble wrap for all I care. Jeez.
Right. Yeah. Just don't rush him too early. I think that's where I felt like I was pointing fingers is, come on, guys, just do better. Don't have him out on the field after we literally saw him come to his knees.
Again, if it was a Sunday, maybe, but the Thursday stuff,
Yeah. So there could be a new rule change coming because of that whole situation. The NFL and the NFLPA are expected to agree to a new protocol forbidding any players to return to a game if they demonstrate instability. And I think we did see that this past Sunday with a couple of teams. Some players got hit in the head. They were out for the rest of the game. So definitely a good change to come. On September 29th, it was announced that despite Hurricane Ian, Sunday Night Football between the Buccaneers and the Chiefs would take place in Tampa Bay. That was primetime yesterday. So after all the destruction of Hurricane Ian, I mean, no major damage was made to the Tampa Bay field. So as for our Seahawks here, we shift back over to our Hawks. In the regular season, they're 2-2. They're 3rd in the NFC West, and they're looking ahead. They're playing on October 9th at the New Orleans Saints, and that's a 10 a.m. game.
That one will be tough. Anytime you go into the Superdome, even regardless of what their roster looks like. So hoping they can keep things going and that defense can short stuff off a bit.